but I just want to let you know that we are recording and we will record the Q&A questions as well. If you have questions as we present today, please enter your questions through the Q&A feature to the right of your screen, and we will respond to those during our pause breaks and as we go through the training today. On this webinar today for Measure Progress, our Measure Progress team, we have myself, Stephanie Arroyo. I'm a Senior Specialist in our Client Services Division, Special Education. We also have Adrienne Hoyt, who is a Program Manager. She'll be presenting a little bit later in the hour. We also have with us Erin Clark, another Program Manager, and Kelly Ickes, our Assistant Director, and Chris Clough, our Program Manager, are also on the line. From the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, we also have Tanya Mead. She's the Assessment Specialist for Administration and Engagement, as well as the State MSAA Coordinator. And we also have Michael Craig, who is the Assessment Specialist for Special Populations. Today we will be covering a lot of information. First, we'll be providing you an overview of the MSAA program as a whole, the training requirements and responsibilities of TAs, the important source documents, which will be your go-to documents and technological requirements of the MSAA system. Following that more general information, we will dive into how to access the MSAA system as well, and we'll cover what must happen before testing, how to navigate the system, and again, with some visual aids, we'll talk about the requirements for after testing as well. We will cover assessment features and the use of assistive technology during today's training as well. In order to make this administration positive experience for our students, we have built in a lot of supports for TAs, and we'll be able to demonstrate those for you a little bit later. Again, please feel free to write any questions in the Q&A box, and we will address them as we move forward throughout today's topics. Just want to, as we move through the PowerPoint today, you will see these three icons, one of these three icons in the top right-hand corner. The TAM, the green box right here, this represents the Teacher Administration Manual. Most of the information that we are presenting to you today will come from this manual. It will also indicate the page number where you can reference that information and get further details. The next two guides are the TA user guides for the online assessment system and the TC user guide, and again with page references. Together, these three documents are your go-to documents, and we'll be referencing them throughout today's presentation. So let's go into our MSAA overview. We have a lot of new features this year that we've been working on. One specifically being with the TAM, the Teacher Administration Manual. We've condensed down this manual and clarified a lot of information. It used to be upward of 100 pages. It is now down to 39, so it's a lot more user-friendly. One of the things that we have done to make it user-friendly is we've included this important dates page right in the front of the TAM. It includes all the major dates and milestones for the administration process. Okay. We've also added, well, let's go through those dates first. The MSAA administration window will open on March 27th. The last day to submit requests for grade reassignments and to reopen a closed test is May 9th. The end of test survey and complete the end of test surveys for both content area tests are submitted and closed for all students under the My Students tab by May 12th. The MSAA administration window will close also on May 12th, Eastern Standard Time. Another part of the important dates page is this bottom box that lists all of your administration resources, your state-specifically policy documents, the Test Administration Manual, also known as the TAM, the Test Coordinator and Test Administrator user guides are all located in the resource section. The Test Administrator and Test Coordinator training modules and final quiz, those will be available on Monday, March 13th, that's this coming week. Those are available under the Test Administration Training tab using this link. All the sample items are located in the Sample Items tab, and the directions for test administration, the DPAs for ELA and mathematics, are under the action button in the My Students. So the purpose of the MSAA has not changed. The MSAA was developed by a group of states, the federally funded National Center and State Collaborative, NCSIC, and transitioned to MSAA. It is to ensure that all students are able to participate in an assessment that is a measure of what they know and can do in relation to the grade level state content standards, and it's to ensure that students with significant cognitive disabilities achieve increasingly higher academic outcomes and leave high school prepared for post-secondary options. It's also to meet the requirements of the Every Student Succeeds Act and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which requires the participation of all students in assessments designed to measure student knowledge and ability on grade level content standards. The participation criteria is located on page 7 of the TAM, that's the Teacher Administration Manual, and the participation criteria has not changed at all. It might look a little bit different because we've overhauled the TAM, but the 3 main components for the participation criteria is that the student must have a significant cognitive disability, the student is learning content linked to grade level content standards, and the student requires extensive direct individualized instruction and substantial supports to achieve measurable gains in a grade and age-appropriate curriculum. Okay, so again, this information hasn't changed. You can reference it on page 7 of the TAM. The MSAA assesses 2 content areas, English language arts for reading and writing, as well as mathematics. It is aligned to the state content standards and MSAA core content connectors. And the eligible students are students in 3 through 8 and 11 who meet that participation criteria. The MSAA is a one-to-one administration and must be administered by a trained test administrator. The formats for the MSAA are the same. It is a computer-based format or a paper-based format downloaded from the platform, and the test administrator would enter the student responses in the online platform if they're using paper-based. Let's dive into those options a little bit more in depth. So you can use a computer, laptop, or tablet, or the paper version of the test. Okay? So for computer, your students are, if you're going to use the computer version, your students are fairly independent using a computer or a tablet. They're using them already in daily instruction. These are students who can manipulate a mouse and use a keyboard with some independence. While some students may be fairly independent, you, the TA, though, must be present at the time of testing to ensure that the student has all necessary supports, to monitor the student for frustration, for fatigue, and to ensure that all accommodations are appropriately administered, to provide any necessary manipulatives and tools, and to ensure that the student does not accidentally click on a button that may close or submit a test. Okay. The computer administration is considered the standard administration for this test. The paper version of the administration is for students who cannot use a computer or tablet. These are students who may use eye gaze boards or have significant motor challenges that prevent them from being able to use a mouse, keyboard, or writing utensil. This accommodation may also be helpful for students who are easily distracted by technology. For example, they may focus more on the clicking of the answer options rather than paying attention to the actual test items. Students benefiting from this type of administration would also need the paper version and a scribe accommodation documented in their IEP. Okay. So in addition to the computer or paper version, you can have a hybrid. You can offer some computer-based and some paper. Okay. This is for students who have some ability to use a mouse or have very limited keyboard and/or keyboard knowledge and skills. For example, some students may be able to use a mouse to select their responses for short bursts of time, but then they need assistance when they become physically fatigued. Other students may be able to use a mouse to select their answers, but cannot type or need significant assistance. For these students receiving this type of administration, accessibility features and the test support both the computer administration and the paper version. administration. Okay. Students who benefit from this type of administration would also need paper version and scribe accommodations documented in their IEP. Okay. Just want to make a note that all students must be entered for session 1. We'll talk about the sessions momentarily before an assignment can be made for session 2. Okay, so if you're offering the paper version or the computer version, all answers must be completed in session 1 before the student can move on to session 2. It is also important to remember that breaks in testing can be given at any time. There's no limit to the number of breaks a student can give or receive during testing. Also, I want to note here that regardless of which format you use, the testing time will vary for each student because the testing can be paused and resumed based on the student's needs, and we recommend that. We often get the question, how much time should I block out to administer this test? It is very individualized, so we do recommend that you follow the needs of your student. If your student needs a break for 5–10 minutes, take that break. If they need to tackle it again on a different day, a couple of days out, that is absolutely fine as well. Okay. So one of the newest features that we have is beginning this year, MSAA allows students to have a test experience that assigns the second session of the assessment based on how the student responds to a set of items in the first session. So we're becoming stage adaptive. So this session 1, what we were talking about earlier, all answers must be submitted for session 1 before you can be assigned to session 2. Session 1 contains items from a broad range of tiers that all students will take. So session 1 will determine which version of stage 2 the student will take. Okay. The versions in the second session do vary by difficulty and complexity. Each student will only take the session 2 version that they are assigned to. Okay. Once they've completed session 2, they will be directed to session 3 for the writing prompt. All students are directed to session 3 for the writing prompt. The writing prompt is not stage adaptive and is assigned randomly to each student. Okay. So all students take session 1. Once those answers are submitted, they are directed to one of these 3 versions in session 2. Once they complete session 2, they are all directed to a randomly selected writing prompt. Mathematics is presented in the same way with responses for session 1 being entered. All students take session 1. These are items that have varying complexity and difficulty levels. They'll be directed to session 2 based on how they perform in session 1. For mathematics, there is no session 3. So this segues into some more of what's new for this year. We want to share with you some of the work that was done with the Teacher Administration Manual. It is available in 2 formats. There's an online color version with all the hyperlinks and bookmarks that you can click directly on. And there's also a black and white print version available. Okay, the TAM has been completely overhauled this year. As I mentioned earlier, it was reduced down from over 100 pages down to 39. So it's a lot more user-friendly, it's clear, it's concise. Okay. We've also added several features to the TAM. We've reorganized the information significantly. One of the first pages that you'll see is the State MSA Coordinators page. We'll talk about that momentarily. Also, there's an MSA Technical Support page following the MSA Coordinator page and all the important dates documents. These 3 pages are now up front in the TAM. Before, these documents were kind of in the appendices, middle of the TAM, end of the TAM, but these are 3 very important pages that you kind of have your thumb on, be able to get to quickly. So those are now up front in the TAM. So let's take a further look at some of these changes. Okay. One of the other additions and revisions to the TAM that we were able to make, the procedures for assessing students who were blind, deaf, or deafblind has been embedded into the assessment features and accommodations sections of the TAM. This document was previously a separate document. It was a secure document, but we have now been able to take that information and apply it to the assessment features and accommodations section of the TAM. So that document no longer exists. All your information is located in the TAM. Okay. We've added vocabulary lists for both ELA and mathematics. These are located in the appendices as a resource for terms that are actually on the test. The documents were created so that teachers and students could become familiar with these vocabulary terms prior to the assessment, and you may begin teaching them as soon as possible. As well, we wanted to make them available to ASL signers. Another piece to the TAM that we've added to help you out is we've added TC and TA checklists for administration. These two checklists provide TAs and TCs information to check off for before, during, and after administration procedures. We'll talk about that a little bit later today, but we recommend that these documents be used to kind of navigate you through the administration process so that something is not missed. This is what the color version of the TAM looks like. Again, it's got a new look and feel. I just want to highlight this is the form or procedures for assessing students who are blind, deaf, and deafblind. This document no longer exists. I don't want you to go looking for it. It is no longer available. All the information, the necessary information, is embedded into the TAM. Okay. If you have students who are identified as having low vision, no functional use of vision, undetermined functional use of vision, significant hearing loss, even with hearing aids, or undetermined functional use of hearing, you're going to want to reference the assessment features and accommodations section of the TAM, okay? This document goes away. Looking at the state MSAA coordinators page, this is a document I mentioned a little bit ago that contains all state contact information for all states in MSAA. This is the District of Columbia section. It has all of Tanya Mead's information, her phone number, email, as well as the link for the District of Columbia's state-specific policy document. So this link right here is where you will access the state-specific policy documents that is referenced throughout the TAM and will be referenced momentarily. I'll show you what that document looks like. You will want to go and check that document out. This is the document. This is the DC-specific state policy document. All states were requested to do this to help kind of have one place for all of the information. This document contains information around test administrator requirements, paper version of the test for DC, training for test administrators, test security, school test coordinator and test coordinator information, registering students and creating classes, and incident reporting, any test security violations, students who are not completing the test, open, closed test information. So this is a document, like I said, you'll want to go to the state coordinator page and click on this link to get to this document. In addition, we've provided more information around how to receive technical support. This support page is right up front. It's page 2 of the TAM. Basically, we have a 3-tiered process. We want TAs to contact their TC or the MSAA Service Center for any issues that they have. Once, if they need more information, the TC isn't able to answer that question, then the TC will contact the MSAA State Coordinator. We're doing this to kind of streamline the flow of information to make sure everyone's receiving the same information, and if there are problems that are being identified, we can tackle those problems quickly and efficiently. For now, just know that we've also made many adjustments and enhancements to the Service Center. For example, we have a brand new ticketing system, and all of our service agents have received comprehensive training. They've gone through a training program. They continue to be updated on that information. They are updated with the platform, the new platform pieces as well. So this should hopefully help flow information this year. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, test administrators have specific responsibilities that have to be completed before, during, and after testing. This is the test administrator checklist. It's 2 pages located on page 37 and 38 in the appendices. It's also talked about on page 10 in the TAM. Some of the important responsibilities that you have as a TA that you perform before testing is to complete the student profile for each student who is being tested. The student profile information is filled out in the system and includes tabs for demographics, the learner characteristics inventory, it's also known as the LCI, accommodations, and a student response check, which is also known as the SRC. Some responsibilities during testing are to follow the directions for test administration, the DPAs, when administering the test, provide accommodations as indicated in the student's IEP, as well as in the TAM, the Teacher Administration Manual, and maintain test security at all times. After testing, you're required to submit the student's test, report any test irregularities, ensure all printed copies of the test, DTAs, and student work are given to the test coordinator for secure shredding, and complete the accommodations after test tab and the end of test survey. I just want to highlight here that all printed tests and DTAs must be securely shredded, and any order materials that are shipped and barcoded must be returned to measure progress using the return envelope and UPS label for shipment. Again, this TA checklist is available to assist you in performing and completing all of the responsibilities of your role. Completion of all test administrator responsibilities before, during, and after test administration is really necessary for a successful test administration. So again, this document is located in the back of the TAM, and we recommend that you print a copy of that and kind of keep it out in a place where you're checking it off as you go through the administration process. Test coordinators also have specific responsibilities that must be completed before, during, and after testing. They have a one-page checklist. Some of their important responsibilities before administration are to complete the required training modules, ensure that you, all TAs, have received and completed your required training modules and can access the MSAA online system, and ensure that technology capacities are met and provide administration support to you. Some of the important responsibilities that they have during the administration is to monitor the administration of the test, maintain test security, report any inappropriate test practices in accordance with the state policy, report security violations and test irregularities to the state MSAA coordinator, and ensure that all tests have been submitted or closed by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on May 12th. Some responsibilities they have after administration are to report all inappropriate test practices, security violations, suspected irregularities to the MSAA state coordinator, as well as to securely shred all printed copies of the test, DTA, the directions for test administration, scoring rubrics, and student work, any writing materials, for example. The TA and TC checklists are, again, designed to assist you in performing and completing all your responsibilities of your designated role. So please make sure you refer to both lists. And like I said, I think it's handy to keep it somewhere where you're seeing it on a daily basis and checking off as you go what you've completed. Some other things that are new for this year, one thing change to the assessment is that there are no more foundational reading items in grades 3 and 4. These items were the Braille items last year. Verbal and nonverbal students do not need a special form this year and will only need to be identified in the Student Learning Characteristics Inventory, that LCI. And this is the reason for the change in the procedures for assessing students who are blind, deaf, and deafblind. This document does not need to be secure anymore. The information that was previously provided regarding Braille, that was the secure information. Since it's gone away, we've been able to take the other information and just embed it into the TAM. Okay. As we mentioned earlier, we're stage adaptive, so that's really exciting. And we've had some changes to the MSAA platform. It's been updated with new user permissions. TAs, we'll talk about this several times today. TAs no longer have the ability to close a test. Only TCs may add or edit student records, such as student ID, name, and grade, and they're the only ones who can close a test. We've improved the evidence upload process to be clearer and allows for checking the uploaded evidence. We've also, for ease of review, the form assignments and student profile grade have been added to the My Students page. And lastly, tablets and devices are now supported for test delivery. Let's talk a little bit about your test administrator role, responsibility, and the training requirements. Every effort has been made to ensure that you are ready to administer the assessment with confidence. As a TA, you must complete all of the MSAA training modules. These modules are customized along with the presentation to help you prepare for test administration. However, we do highly recommend that you spend time with the actual documents that we'll mention. We've talked about a little bit, but we'll talk about more. It's very important that you know what information is in there as well. The modules are available on March 13th, that's next Monday. Again, they're customized for specific responsibilities of the TA. They refer to the information found in the TAM, the Directions for Test Administration, the DPAs, as well as the MSAA System User Guide for Test Administrators. Okay. All TAs must complete the final quiz with at least an 80% accuracy score to gain access to the Directions for Test Administration, those DPAs. These are the 6 modules that are required for TAs. This is good news. We were able to reduce down from 13 last year modules to 6. Because the information has been condensed and clarified, we were also able to do that with the modules. So the modules, there are 6 of them. The order is slightly different from the order in the TAM, but it's the same 6 modules, same 6 titles. I just want to highlight that the TA modules 1, 2, and 6 are the exact same content as the TC modules 1, 2, and 6. That's the MSAA Overview, the Test Design and Experience, and the Student Response Check and Early Stopping Rule. There are a couple other modules that will appear to have the same title between the TAs and TC modules, but they're slightly different based on the audience, and those 2 are completing the student information and navigating the MSAA online system. Each module is about 20 minutes in length. We're trying to shorten them a little bit. We are in the recording process now, so I don't have exact times for each module, but you should plan on at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes for the modules. There are a couple that will push that 30-minute mark. Test coordinator responsibilities. Your TCs are responsible for managing the administration of the MSAA test. They must complete all 6 of their administration modules for TCs as well. And again, those modules are available March 13th, next Monday. And those modules are really customized for their specific responsibilities as a TC and refer to the Test Administration Manual, the Directions for Test Administration, and the MSAA User Guide for Test Coordinators. TCs are responsible for managing, like I said, managing the MSAA test. They have to complete all 6 of the modules, just like you do, and they're available March 13th. Okay, and you'll see here that, again, a lot of the titles look the same. Modules 1, 2, and 6 do have the same titles. They're the same information, but modules 3, 4, and 5 are different and really designated for the TC. Okay. So I think we're going to pause at this time. If you have any questions on the information that we've presented thus far, please go ahead and add those into the Q&A box, and we will take a look at those and answer questions now. If you could keep them to the information that we've provided so far, that would be great. If you have a policy question, we'll have to direct that to Tanya and probably answer that at a later date. And just know that we will get to system-related stuff momentarily, and you can ask those system-related questions when we get there. During this time, we will be muted for about 5 minutes to allow folks to enter their questions in, and then we will come back on. Thank you. So we have a couple of great questions that are coming in. I'm going to go ahead and start addressing them. One of the questions that we got was, is the quiz an open book? Of course, yes, it is. And if you happen to not achieve that 80% on the first time you take the quiz, you can go back and retake it until you achieve the 80%. So yes, we want you to be using your materials. That is fine, because those are your go-to documents that you will use during administration. Do TCs have to take the quiz as well? TCs do not have to take the quiz. That is not a requirement for TCs. And then just to clarify, TAs and TCs have different modules to complete, or are they the same? Again, modules 1, 2, and 6 overlap between TA and TC. 1, 2, and 6 are the same. 3, 4, and 5 are different and are based on the audience that they are under. Okay. Was there another one? I'm going to pause for just another minute, see if we get any other questions, and then we'll go ahead and get started again. Okay, so how do we get a hard copy of the TAM? The hard copy TAMs have already been ordered and shipped. They were shipped based on a 1:5 ratio, so 1 TAM for every 5 students. So if you have not received a hard copy of the TAM, you'll want to reach out to your test coordinator and go ahead and call the service center. You can also download the TAM from the MSAA site. And we have that link throughout the presentation. Okay. Is the administration of the test, does it have to be on consecutive days, or can it be spaced out? It absolutely can be spaced out. It's really based on what's best for your student. Every student is different. If that student can do it each day, then great, but it can be spaced out over the entire window. We recommend that. What was the other one? What is the last day we can take the module quizzes? There's really not a defined date for the module quizzes, but you cannot access the directions for test administration until you complete that quiz, complete the modules and pass the quiz with the 80%. So I do recommend that you begin watching those modules and complete it, the quiz as soon as possible, starting next week. Are there any other questions? Let me see questions, Adrian. Okay. I think we've addressed all the questions that have come through at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the presentation, and just know that we will have a couple other moments where we pause and take questions, as well as at the end. So if you think of something, just go ahead and add it into that Q&A box. Okay. So next we're going to talk about the important documents. These are your resource documents. You can find a chart starting on page 6 that lists out all of the different documents that you need to be aware of and you need to spend time reviewing, becoming familiar with the information. The Test Administration Manual, the TAM, this provides the policies and procedures for TAs and TCs to prepare for the administration of the test. So both TAs and TCs need to be familiar with this document. The Directions for Test Administration, the DPAs, this document provides directions and scripts for each item of the test. It includes details about manipulatives that are required in order to administer a test item, such as calculators or counters in mathematics. It includes reference sheets that contain important graphics. It also includes scoring rubrics for mathematics, constructive response items. It also provides the writing prompt script, any mentor text where applicable, graphic organizers, student response templates, and stimulus materials for all writing prompts at each grade level. So the DPAs are primarily used by the TA. You'll want to familiarize yourself with the DPAs for each of your students prior to the assessment. The MSAA Online Assessment System User Guide for Test Administrators. This document is primarily used by TAs as well. It provides you the technical information for troubleshooting tips and step-by-step instructions to navigate the MSAA online system, such as how to complete the LCI. The LCI is the Learner Characteristics Inventory, how to pause and resume a test, how to submit a test for scoring, and when to contact the MSAA Service Center, and how to administer the Student Response Checks, the SRC. The MSAA Online Assessment System User Guide for Test Coordinators is primarily used by test coordinators. It also provides technical information and troubleshooting tips, step-by-step instructions to navigate the MSAA Online Assessment System, such as how to check that all TAs have completed their training, how to ensure that all students are properly registered and have the correct grade levels assigned, how to ensure that all tests have been submitted for scoring, and how and when to close a student test. There are basically 3 item types on the MSAA. The selected response items appear in both ELA and mathematics sessions of the test. All directions and materials needed for administering the SR items are in the directions for test administration for the specific content area. We also have constructive response items, CRs, in mathematics. They do not appear in ELA, so it is mathematics only. These items ask the student to develop an answer instead of selecting an answer from answer options. Each item is presented to the student in a standardized, scripted sequence of steps, accumulating in the TA, scoring the student's performance using the mathematics scoring rubrics, and entering the response. Directions and materials needed for administering these items are included in the directions for test administration for mathematics. For the writing prompt in ELA, this requires students to produce a permanent product in response to a prompt. Each writing prompt DTA contains a standardized script sequencing of the steps for TAs to follow. includes graphic organizers for students to make notes and plan their essays, provides a template to write their essay before it is typed onto the computer or uploaded into the system, and provides mentor text to present the student as an example of a finished product when needed. This screen shows an example of a sample item as it will appear online. Sample item responses are not saved. As you can see, the pages are simply formatted without too much distraction on the page. The previous and next buttons are prominent. They're easily found. To pause the test, you click on Save and Exit right here on the bottom of the screen. And to access a list of assessment features, you would click on the Sample Items button right here, and there will be a drop-down menu with all the different assessment features. And we'll go over those features momentarily. It is highly recommended that TAs practice using the toolbar buttons. After starting a test, the first question in the test will be displayed. The item will be prominently displayed in the middle of the screen. If applicable, a scroll bar will appear on the right-hand side of the screen. You can increase or decrease the size of the text and graphics by following your computer shortcuts. For example, on PCs, you can press the toolbar at the bottom of each test item page. So let's take a closer look at all of the different functions of the toolbar. Circle right here is the Read Again button. This is for items that have multiple screens to navigate through. If the student wants to read the item or passage again from the beginning, the TA or student can click the Read Again button, and it will return to the display of the first page of the passage or the screen for the item. Okay, that's the Read Again button. The previous button moves back one screen, whereas the next button will move you forward one screen. The Questions List button provides the TA and the student with a summary of questions or items that have or have not been answered. By clicking on the question or item in the Questions List column, the TA or student is directed back to that particular item. Items that the TA or student bookmark for further review are also displayed on this list. The Toggle button provides full screen mode for viewing an item. The Toggle button is highly recommended so that a student doesn't accidentally close the test, and they can also see more of the item on the screen as well. So we recommend toggling to full screen mode. The Support button provides the TA with a phone number to the MSAA Service Center should the TA experience technical difficulties and or need assistance while this test is in session. So that button right there, you can be in session and you can call the Service Center and talk to them about what is happening on your screen if necessary. The student name is always displayed in the lower left corner. Clicking on the student name using the up arrow right here, this will provide the assessment features drop-down menu that we just showed you on the sample items. So if you're going to use any assessment features, you click on the student name and then click on the drop-down menu and select those items. We'll go over those momentarily as well. Down here at the bottom of the toolbar, this is the name of the test, session, current question the student is on out of the total number of questions provided for that session. This is also where the TA can verify the test, the current session, and the question the student is on out of, or the total number of questions that have been answered in that particular session. This is the bookmark button. This bookmarks an item to be reviewed at a later time. So if you want to pause, bookmark it, you can go back to it later. The student can also choose that. And then this icon right here, this is the Upload Evidence button. It only appears during the writing prompt. This upload button uploads images of student work for the writing prompt. It is not available or visible during reading or mathematics items, though. And again, here is the Save and Exit button, and this is how you would save and exit out of the test or pause a test to be resumed later. So we're going to look at an ELA grade 8 sample item. This item is also on page 13 of the TAM. The first thing you'll see with the ELA reading items is an introductory text that orients the student to the passage and the question that the student will answer at the end. Next, the passage is read to the student aloud by either the TA or by using the computer. At the end of the passage, the student is asked if they would like the passage reread before the question is asked. The question is, what is the theme of the story? There are 3 answer options to choose from with visual support. The only time a question will appear at the end of an entire passage is when the focus is about the entire passage, for example, main idea, summary, or a theme. Please also note that this slide shows an entire passage and the answer options displayed side by side. This is just for our presentation purposes today. This is not how they are typically displayed online. The question and answer options are displayed on separate pages from the passages, and we'll discuss page breaks momentarily. In looking at the writing prompt administration, each grade span assesses a different writing style. Elementary assesses literary, middle school assesses explanatory, and high school assesses argumentative and persuasive. The writing prompt provides steps to guide students through the writing process using stimulus materials for topic selections, choosing characters and supporting details, drafting, revising, editing, and producing their final story or essay. The writing prompt also requires students to produce a permanent product in response to the writing prompt. Each writing prompt DTA contains a standardized scripted sequence of steps for the TA to follow, a graphic organizer for students to make notes and plan their essay, a template to write their essay on before it is typed into the computer or uploaded into the system, and then also mentor text is presented to students as an example of a finished product where necessary in grades 3, 4, 5, and 11. And we received a question in previous trainings, why is the mentor text not available at other grades? That is because the mentor text is kind of already embedded in the item and it's not necessary. For the writing prompt, students enter their writing product into the response template in the system. If the student has a scribe accommodation, then the TA or scribe will type the student response product into the MSAA system. This information I'm going to present now can be found on page 12 of the TAM as well as page 29 of the TA user guide for the online system. There are 2 ways to capture student evidence for the writing prompt in the MSAA online system. That is by use of computer webcam to capture an image of the evidence, or to scan the evidence using a scanner and upload the file as an attachment. Regardless of which method you use, you have to upload the evidence while the prompt is still on the test screen. Once the test is submitted, TAs cannot get back to the item to upload evidence. This is a screenshot from the TA user guide. Again, this is just about the evidence upload button is available in the toolbar for uploaded student evidence, and the writing evidence will be uploaded only for the writing. It is important to upload the evidence before the session is submitted again. Please remember that once the session is submitted, you cannot get back to upload evidence. If the image is accessible, this is also from the user guide. You can add a description for the captured image in the description box right here. This is sometimes helpful for just writing a brief description about what it is you've uploaded so that you can ensure when you review that you actually have what you intended. You would click the Attach Image button, and if you were unhappy with that image, you could also retake it. When you accept the image, a confirmation message will appear down here. And also I want to highlight this is a big change for this year. Only JPEG files may be uploaded, okay? This is a change, so if you are unsure of how to save a JPEG file, you will want to review that prior to the writing assessment, and the TA user guide also has information on that. How to capture evidence if you have a scanner or camera. When the student completes the writing product, you'll pause the test by using the Save and Exit button while the item is displayed on the screen. You can capture the evidence of student work using a scanner or camera, but please note that following, some large-scale printers have built-in scanning functionality. That's helpful. A school-issued camera may be available to provide an image in the appropriate file type, so check out your camera ahead of time. And again, remember, JPEG files are the only acceptable evidence file type. The other thing you want to be sure with the writing prompts is you want to be sure that you can access the evidence files from the computer you're using. You can do this by emailing the files to yourself, saving to a shared drive accessible by the computer, or saving the files directly to the computer. And there's more information on this in the user guide on page 31. If your writing response upload contains identifying student information, such as the student's name, you must ensure that you are handling the evidence according to the security guidelines outlined in the test administration manual. Okay. Next, we're going to look at mathematics grade 3. This sample is also on page 14 of the TAM. Mathematics is definitely presented in a similar format. The item begins with a model telling the student what the item is about, and then it's followed by the item and the answer options. Okay. Page breaks do often split up the questions from the answers. This is something we're still working on. Sometimes not all of the answer choices can be on one screen. There are some solutions though. You can use the scroll back button. You can zoom by using the control plus or minus. And then you can also display the assessment on a Promethean or Smartboard. This last suggestion, using Promethean and Smartboard, this is highly, highly recommended if you have access to that and if your student is familiar with using them. They will present most of the item, or if not all of the item, on one screen. So that is the best method if you're worried about page breaks and how your student will react to that. The directions for test administration, the DTAs. The DTAs in each content area provide you with a script of specific instructions for administration of that particular part of the test. It also provides additional materials for test administration in each DTA. That could be a list of manipulatives by form and reference sheets. TAs, you should always refer to the TAM and the DTAs for all directions regarding the administration of the test. Each DTA is specific to the form of the test that is assigned to the student, so you need to make sure that you're using the correct DTA by form for each student. And you can download the DTAs using the action button in the MSAA online system at this website, www.msaassessment.org. This was the website that I was mentioning earlier that is throughout the presentation, okay? Just remember, you cannot download the DTAs until you've completed your training requirements of reviewing all 6 of those modules and passing the end of quiz, test quiz with 80% accuracy. Okay, that's the only way you get access to the DTAs. You'll need to read the directions, passages, items, and answer options exactly as written using a consistent rate of reading and tone, voice as appropriate. And we want you to be familiar with and utilize the alternate text as appropriate. Alternative text is written in italics and appears in brackets in the DTAs. There are 2 types of alternative text provided. The first one is for all students that includes standardized descriptive statements for tables, charts, graphs, timelines, and math flow to be read aloud to all students. And the second is for students who are blind or have visual impairments, including, it would include descriptive statements for tables, charts, graphs, and any other graphic necessary for appropriate interaction with the items. So for example, an answer option that has a graphic with no accompanying text, or a graphic that provides contextual cues for a sighted student. Okay. If alternative text for students who are blind or have visual impairments is not read by the computer, the TA must read this text aloud to the student as indicated in the DTA. I also want to note here that in the DTAs, the text that is typically gray is directed to TAs as information that is not read to students. But please note that the gray text in the DTAs in brackets that refers to the alt text will always appear in brackets with directions to the teacher, the TA, to read those directions and to read the alternative text. While this has not been an issue thus far, we do recognize that the gray text rules may be confusing in the DTAs, and we'll look into clarifying this a little bit better going forward. But I just want to make sure that you do know that the alternative text will always appear in brackets. It will always direct the TA to read that information. This is an example of a DTA. It's also located on page 16 of the TAM. Any script that the TA would read aloud is in black, and any action the TA must perform is in gray italics. This is what I was mentioning before. Point to and read each answer option. So this is an action. You don't read that out loud to the student. But if we look at mathematics, it will tell you whether or not a calculator is allowed on the item. That's always identified at the beginning with a big X. If the TA is reading aloud to the student, again, the information is given in black. And any action that the TA would complete is in gray italics. Again, the gray italics located here and here, you'll see that those are in brackets, and it says for students with visual impairments, B, this is a circle that is divided into 3 equal parts. No parts are shaded. So that would be read to the student because it's in brackets for students with visual impairments. Okay. We're going to pause again here at this time. Are there any questions related to the sample items, the items themselves, the DTAs, what information is in them? I can tell you the DTAs have also been revised. There was a lot of front matter in the DTAs that was repetitive last year. That information has been taken out and it's embedded in the TAM as well, so that really the information that is in the front of the DTAs is pertinent to that exact form and those exact items that are in that test. So that should help with some of the reading and navigating the DTAs as well. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes and look at answering some questions. We're going to be on mute for a couple minutes, so go ahead and keep typing, and as we start seeing the questions come in, we'll start responding to them as well. Okay, so there's a couple of questions about writing evidence and submitting the writing prompt. So the first question is, which parts of the writing section are on paper and which are online? So in the DTA for writing, there are some pieces related to that writing prompt, some templates and some blank sort of manipulatives that are used to create that finished writing product. So those pieces are from the DTA, those are outside of the system, but that finished writing product that the student creates, that is the piece that goes into the platform as evidence. So there's another question about what type of evidence would be entered and for what reason. So that final writing prompt, that final piece of writing that the student produces, that is the evidence that would be entered into the platform. If the student is able to type their own response into the computer, then they would be typing that in, and you wouldn't necessarily have a separate piece of paper that has the students writing prompts on it. So there's another question that came in to clarify the italicized bracketed information. Is it read aloud or not? Yes, if your student needs the alternative text due to visual impairments and whatnot, that information is read aloud, and it directs you to read it aloud. Does the calculator not permitted on this item apply even for students who have the use of calculator on non-calculator sections of accommodations of their IEP apply? So this is a policy question. Every state has a different policy on this, so we will add this question to the Q&A that will be printed and posted at a later date, but I recommend that you contact Tanya Mead at OSSE, and her information will be on the last slide of the presentation today around the policy for this, and also check out the state-specific policy to see if that information may be there. But every state is a little bit different, and that's really a policy question. Okay, so I think that we've answered all the questions that have come in that we can at this time. If we haven't, just please let us know, and we will make sure we do. And again, there are a couple more pause points throughout the last hour here and at the end of the session where we can continue to answer questions. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the technology requirements piece. MSAA is working very hard to keep up with the technology requests and all the changes. We do have some exciting news this year. Tablets and mobile devices are now supported for test delivery. And when using these devices and operating systems, you can use the ones that are listed on this slide. So you can use Chromebook, iPad 2, iPad mini, Windows Surface, and they're compatible with the interactive whiteboard. Please remember that if you're going to use any of these, that you should be using, testing them out with the sample items. Make sure your devices that you plan on using for administration work well and the student is familiar with them, that those devices are being used in daily instruction. So we highly recommend that you use those devices with the sample items and check them out to make sure that they are compatible and working correctly prior to the assessment. Just remember, I want to go back to one comment before we move on. If you're using the interactive whiteboards, just remember that this is a one-to-one assessment. So TAs really need to make sure that if you're using a smart board with your students, that other students are not exposed to the content or the answers. That doesn't mean that you can't have other students in the classroom, but you should make sure that the student who's being assessed is away from those other students so that the content is not being shared with other students or their responses. There are 3 major browsers that are supported: Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. Currently, we recommend the latest version for each of these browsers for the test. If you would like to determine, if you don't know what browser you're running, what version it is, you can actually go to whatthebrowser.org. This website will determine what browser you have, and it also offers free upgrades to these supported versions up here. So we do recommend for Chrome that you're using 26 and above, Firefox 24 and above, and Internet Explorer 11 and above. Please note that Windows no longer provides security updates below Internet Explorer 11, so using a lower version is a security risk, so we really do want you to go to whatthebrowser.org and download the correct version to use. In addition to the devices listed previously, the delivery is supporting desktop computers with OS versions listed here, so Windows and Mac are allowed. Next, this next section we're going to talk about are the embedded supports and features that are offered through the MSAA online system. There are a few built-in supports. The entire test can be read aloud. There's use of manipulatives. Pictures and graphics are support what is read. There's use of models and demonstrations. And common geometric shapes or smaller members in the math test are available. To activate your features in the MSAA online system, you would click on the student's name down here in the bottom left-hand corner, use the drop-down arrow, and it will give you the drop-down box, and you would select which features you would like to use. The one thing to note about this, if you pause and resume the test, when you go back into the test, you would need to reselect these assessment features. They do not hold if you pause, resume, and exit out of the test. So you need to go back and do that every time that you resume a test. Okay. You may increase the size of the text, graphics, the volume through the computer's browser or operating system. Most computers provide a magnification or zoom function. Using the control key and the plus sign key at the same time will increase the size of the text on the screen. Projection systems and video magnifiers via closed-circuit television systems may also be used to increase size. This is the answer masking assessment feature. It allows the student or the TA to electronically cover answers to reveal one answer choice at a time. You simply use the show or hide buttons here. And just to make sure that TAs who are using the masking with paper administration, as long as the TAs mask the answer choices in a way that doesn't cue the correct answer, that is also accessible if you're using paper. But for the online version, you just click on the hide or show buttons, and it will show one response at a time. This is the background font color assessment feature. The student or the TA can change the screen background and or font color for color contrast based on the student's needs and preferences of the student by selecting the alternate color theme in the assessment features menu. Okay. Those colors are here, and I just want to point out these are the colors that you have to choose from. When you choose an alternate color theme, the background does change, but any graphic that you have, you can see the number line here is in white. These numbers, the 1/2, the numbers font, these are considered graphics, and those will still appear in white because they're considered a graphic. So it truly only changes the background. So you'll see any graphic in a white box. So that does not change. The line reader tool, when you activate this, it draws the student's attention to one or a few illuminated lines at a time while shading the remaining portion of the screen. The student or the TA can control the placement of the line reader with the computer's up or down arrow keys. The magnification feature allows the user to zoom in and enlarge 2 lines at a time of the text. So it grays out the rest of the passage or item, and it will allow you to see 2 lines of text magnified. The TA may read aloud item directions, response options, and passages as often as is reasonable to obtain the student's response to an item. All text must be read to students exactly as written. There's no paraphrasing allowed, no changing out words or anything like that. And you want to be sure that you're not varying your speed to emphasize certain words in a way that would hint at the correct or incorrect responses as well. So there is the read aloud function. Accommodations, we know accommodations are changes in the test material or procedures of the assessment, but they do not alter what is ultimately being measured. All accommodations must be documented in the student's IEP and used routinely in daily instruction, okay? The allowable accommodations have not changed. This information is on page 24. Assistive technology, paper version of the test, scribe, and sign language are all allowable. Sorry about that. I just want to note here that on page 24, while the allowable accommodations have not changed, their descriptions have been updated, so you may want to go ahead and take a look at that on page 24 of the TAM. Okay. Are there any questions here on any of the assessment features or accommodations? We're going to pause for a couple minutes before we move into the next section, which is accessing the MSAA system, and Adrian will walk you through a few of those slides regarding that. But so before we get into that, are there any questions about the assessment features or accommodations? I'll go ahead and pause for a couple minutes, and when we see questions, we will start to answer them. All right, hi everyone, this is Adrian. So I think we haven't received any more questions, so we're going to move ahead through the accessing the MSAA system. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to walk us through how to access and use the MSAA system. So when new users are added to the system, they receive a welcome email from MSAA Service Center at measuredprogress.org. The email contains information about the MSAA system and your account. And at the bottom of the email is a temporary link used to access your account for the first time. And when you click that link, it will take you into the system and allow you to choose a new password. And that link can only be used one time. Once you've set your new password, you'll click Save, and from that point on, you'll access the site through the MSAAassessment.org website, which I'll put up on the screen in just a minute. You may want to add the email address you see on the slide here, msaaservicecenter@measuredprogress.org, to your district safe list or email filter so that it's not blocked coming in. So once you have logged in for the first time and you have a user account created, you can access the MSAA system by using the URL msaassessment.org as shown here. When you go to that site, the login page will appear as seen on the slide here. You'll enter your email address, which will be your username, and the password that you set when you use that link. Then you'll click Login. We do recommend that you bookmark this page so that you don't have to go back to your email or search for it to find the URL. Okay, once you've logged in, the system opens the dashboard page as your home page. You can navigate within the system using this top navigation bar or by clicking the blocks at the bottom of the screen. You can access the following menu options from the navigation bar. The dashboard, which returns you to this home page. The test status summary, which provides a snapshot of all your tests, of all the tests your students are assigned to, and the number of students assigned to each test and the status of the test. The My Students tab, which provides access to your students and test materials, like the DPA, and enables you to start student tests from the computer. You can also access sample items to practice online navigation or test students' assistive technology devices before launching the actual tests and the test administration training. You'll also find the training modules required for all users and allows you to take the required final quiz. So the test status summary provides you with a summary of each student's test to track and monitor the testing progress during test administration. You may only access tests that are assigned to students you are testing. So to get there, you'll click this test status summary button in the navigation bar or click My Tests from the blocks on the bottom. Each of these will take you to this test status summary page. The My Students page, which you access by using the My Students link in the dashboard, will display the following information: the student ID, the system generated, the student ID, the one that issued by your state, the organization, which is the school or classroom the student is assigned to, the student information, including their first and last name and their student demographic grade, which is new this year, the test name, which is the assigned test, including the form assignment, form 1, 2, or 3, the test status, the status is the same that's displayed on the test status summary, not started, in progress with, paused by, submitted by, closed by. And then next to that, you'll see the test administrator column. So you'll notice that those two columns, the test status and test administrator, sort of work together so you know who has the test in that status. And then the actions menu for each line will contain the actions that you can take, such as start test, resume test, print paper test, print DPA, or go to student profile. And once the test has been completed, that's where you'll access the end of test survey. You can use the My Students page to access student profile information and access the test materials and start or resume the student test. So click on sample items from the navigation panel at the top of the home page. All users have access to the same set of sample items. There are sets of items for math and ELA representing each grade band. And this is a great opportunity for you and your students to become familiar with the online administration features. And you can access the sample items at any time once they become available. As I just mentioned, it's also a good opportunity to test assistive technology with the system. So this screenshot shows you the options for print and download from the action button. So to view the sample items online, you'll click on Actions and Start Test. And to print the sample items, you would click on Actions and Download PDF. So before administering tests to students, the TA is required to complete the student profile, including the LCI, accommodations before test, and the student response check. And the following slides will guide us through the steps. So TAs must provide all information in these tabs to administer a test: the demographics, the LCI, the accommodations before test, and the SRC. So the demographics is general information about the student, including their school and classroom. The LCI is the learner characteristics inventory. The LCI provides a description of the characteristics of the students who participate in the test. The accommodations before test, which is where you would select the accommodations that are documented in the student's IEP or individualized education program. And the SRC, which is the student response check, that allows the TA to launch a content-neutral test to determine if the student's responses can be observed and then respond to follow-up questions. We'll discuss the SRC and how to determine if it needs to be conducted momentarily. So to access the student profile, go to My Students, and a list of your students will appear. If your user account is associated with more than one organization, you'll have to use the drop-down menu to select which you want to look at. So once you're on the student profile page, you would look at the first tab is the student demographic information. So the TA is to review the student demographics. If any changes are needed, contact your test coordinator. And please note that this is a change from last year. TAs can no longer make edits to this tab of the student profile. Once the demographics have been reviewed, you would click on the LCI tab, which is the next tab. So the information from the learner characteristics inventory provides a description that includes 16 learner characteristics of the students who participate in the MSAA, such as primary language, classroom setting, expressive communication, augmentative oral speech, receptive language, vision, braille, hearing, motor engagement, health issues, and reading. And test administrators have to complete all sections of the LCI tab. That means providing a response to each of the items that are shown. Once you've clicked on the LCI tab, there are some drop-down menus that include descriptions of each characteristics and some items which have radio buttons where you would select one answer. The TA should preview the fields and obtain the required student-level information so it can be entered accurately into the MSAA system before administering the test. So you'll complete the tab by making selections for each item. And be sure to scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's a bit longer than the other tabs of the student profile, so make sure you're scrolling all the way to the bottom to see all of those items. Only one response per topic is allowed. And for the vision topic, if you select low vision or no functional use of vision, the audio player will include files that describe the visual elements of an item. After you've completed that tab, you'll click that Save button. It's at the top of the screen here, but there's another Save button at the bottom of the screen. And then the system will display a confirmation that it saves the information you've entered in the tab. Next, you'll click on the Accommodations Before Test tab. The Accommodations Before Test tab must be completed before you start the student test. You would select all accommodations that are documented in the student's IEP. You may not choose paper pencil if it's not in the student's current IEP. If the student does not need any accommodations, please select the last option that reads, check this box if the student does not need any accommodations. After you complete this tab, click on the SRC tab to complete the student response check, which Stephanie is going to walk you through in detail. We want to pause for something? Yes. All right, so we're going to actually just take a minute here to address some any questions about the system or about the pieces of the platform that I've just walked through. Sure. There's a question about how to create or register a username to log into the MSAA site. So in order to get into the system, an account has to be created for you by a test coordinator. So once that's done, you would receive a welcome email that would allow you to log into the site and choose a new password. So that welcome email contains a one-time link that brings you into the system and allows you to set your password. If you have not received that welcome email, you should contact your test coordinator. If you know that you should have an account, you should follow up to make sure that you're in the system, and if not, get added to the system. When can the TC or TA access the student profile? So once a user has an account in the MSAA system, they have access to that My Students page and to their student profile. So once you've logged in and set your password, you can access that student profile page. Okay, for sake of time, I want to make sure we honor the time commitment we have today. I'm going to continue on, but if you have questions, please go ahead and continue entering them. We will definitely review them at the end. So just on this slide, just remember that you need to check all boxes that are applicable. And if there are no accommodations, you're going to check that bottom box. You have to have at least one check mark in this section of the accommodations before tab that Adrian was talking about. So next, we're going to talk about the student response check. The student response check is also known as the SRC. The purpose of the SRC is to ensure that the TA clearly understands the response that the student has indicated for a test item. If the student's response to a test item is not clearly observable or is not understood by the TA or the scribe, then the TA or scribe cannot enter the student's response into the MSAA system. The SRC is a content-neutral task during which the student is asked to demonstrate their preferred modes of communication. A student can use as many or as few communication modes as they are comfortable with and use on a daily basis. The student answers to the items on the student response check are not scored. Okay. They're there just to make sure that you can have an observable response mode. So we've defined the observable response mode as a predictable and consistent behavior or movement that is applicable, or that is able to be understood by a communication partner as intentional communication. This information is located on page 34 of the TAM as well. This can be demonstrating intent toward the task, respond to or shares information about the stimulus, the test item, okay, and assigns meaning to habitual or uncontrollable motor movement or vocalization without communicated intent are not considered response modes. There are many modalities that can be used, eye gaze, reliable gestures, sign language, partner-assisted scanning. Oops. Sorry about that. I'll continue. Scanning with a device, direct selection from an array of choices, activation of voice output device, and use of speech-generating device or other reliable means. It just needs to be reliable and observable. Okay. I'm sorry, here it goes. Okay. Just want to make sure that we are all aware that the use of physical prompts, any hand over hand, physical prompting is not considered an observable response because the student is not indicating his or her answer choice in an independent way. Okay. One of the things that we've done to help with the SRC is we've tried to clarify it, but we've also developed a flow chart that you can use. This flow chart should be used when determining if you should administer the SRC and when TAs should contact their district or school TC to close the test and apply the early stopping rule. Okay. Remember, you do not have the ability to close a test, only TCs do, and the only reason the test can be closed is due to the early stopping rule. TAs can administer the SRC using a paper version or using the computer and a mouse. So when administering the SRC, a couple things to keep in mind. The student's responses do not need to be correct. They just need to be observable. The student may use as many or as few communication modes as necessary. The response modes should be used on a daily basis by the student. Not all response modes may be listed. If the student's preferred response mode is not listed, enter that mode in the other box on the SRC tab. The early stopping rule cannot be applied based on the student's behavior, stamina, knowledge of content, or frustration level. And the SRC must be administered at least once for those students the TA is not sure have an observable response mode. So looking at the flow chart, this is also on page 35. It's in the appendices of the TAM. The first thing you're going to ask yourself is, does the student use one or more of the communication modes listed consistently? That would be a mouse and computer, verbal response to a test item, touch screen, gesture point, circle the response on paper versions of the test, clock scanner with a switch, scanning devices, eye gaze, or any other reliable mode of communication. If the answer is yes, you can stop. You do not need to administer the SRC. You select all response modes that the student will use during the testing in that SRC tab. If your answer to that question is no, you would administer the SRC using the modes of communication that the student is familiar with. Use either the paper or computer version of the SRC. All modes of communication used regularly by the student may be used at the same time. And then you're going to ask yourself again, did the student demonstrate an observable response? If the answer is yes, you can continue to administer the MSAA test in both mathematics and ELA. The test can no longer be closed due to the early stopping rule. If your answer is no, you're going to open the student's mathematics or ELA test booklet from the Actions button on the My Students page. You'll administer the first 4 test items of either one of those tests or both tests, and then you'll ask yourself again, did the student demonstrate an observable response? If yes, they will continue to administer the MSAA in both mathematics and ELA, and the test can no longer be closed due to the early stopping rule. If no, you will stop. The student does not have a consistent observable response. You will contact your district or a school test coordinator and discuss the results of the SRC with them. Only the TC may apply the early stopping rule and close the test. So we've added this flow chart. We hope this will be helpful and clarify when to use the SRC and when to apply the early stopping rule. On this slide, this is just where the SRC is in the MSAA system. You're going to click on the SRC tab. There are 2 ways that you can conduct the student response check. Again, you're going to use computer or the paper-based version. You can click on the computer student response button if the student can indicate a response to an item by using a mouse to select an answer, verbalizing answers, gesture pointing to the answers, or using assistive technology to indicate answers. For students who communicate using gestures, eye gaze, or other modes of communication that make using a computer difficult, conduct the SRC using the paper version. Let's go over in more detail how to conduct the student response check via paper pencil. So you would click on the paper pencil icon button to access the SRC for printing. When you start the SRC on the computer, you and the student will see an introduction to the SRC with some general directions on how to proceed. You'd click the Next button at the bottom of the page to proceed to and through the SRC items. After the student completes the SRC, you'll be returned to the SRC page within the MSAA system, and then you would check all that apply to complete the SRC tab. A verification question will appear. Under each check statement, you'd select yes or no to proceed. After completing the SRC tab and the demographics, the LCI, and the accommodations before test tabs, as described in this section, you can click the Save button at the bottom of the screen. More information on the SRC is located in the TAM under the Implications of Student Response Check section, as well as in the user guide for test administration. Just a quick moment to pause. Are there any questions relating to the SRC, the Student Response Check, or the early stopping rule? I don't see anything coming in regarding the SRC. Just again, continue to add them into the Q&A box. If you have a question that comes to you, we'll answer them at the end of the session. Okay. So administering and navigating the MSAA, you're ready to begin if you have verified that you have all the right technology necessary for testing. All students have gone through some of the practice items. You have finished all of the training modules and completed and passed the final quiz with at least 80% accuracy score. And you have downloaded all the directions for test administration, those DPAs, and you've completed the student profile. You access the directions for test administration. The DPAs are provided to you, the TA, with specific instructions for administration of a particular test in ELA or mathematics. Each DTA will provide you the guidelines for how to present the items to the student, the exact wording to describe the items to be used, and the materials needed to prepare for the test. Okay? So you would just click on the Actions button and then TA Directions, okay? And you can download the instructions from there. To save and exit, please remember that you can use the Save and Exit button to pause and resume a test. If the student needs to take a break from the test, whether it's a few minutes or a few days, and they haven't completed the test, you just click Save and Exit. And this prompt right here will ask you if you would, it confirms whether or not you want to save the student responses and exit out of the test. And you click Yes, Save and Exit, and you'll be returned to the My Students page when you return to the test. When you return to the test on the next session, it will return you to exactly where you left off. Okay. Each TA must only have one student test open at a time, as Adrienne mentioned earlier. Always pause and save a student's test when taking a break. The test is easy to resume where you left off. It will bring you right back to that item. Should a student's test be left open and you have opened another test, the first test may be stalled as in progress. This is also known as a locked test status. If that happens, you need to call the help desk to get your test unlocked. So to start a test, you would select My Students from the navigation panel at the top, or click the button on the main page. You would locate the student test you wish to start and click the Actions button. The options that appear under the Actions button will be dependent on the status of the student progress with that test. You click on Actions, and then you would click on the Start Test right here. This option appears if the test has not been started by the student or TA on the computer. Just note that this option will not be available if the test status is in progress, because in progress is a locked test. You'll need to contact the help desk to unlock it. From there, you'll confirm the student's name, grade, and test. If the student and test are correct, you would select the Begin Now, Test Now button. If the wrong student was selected, you would just click Cancel and return to the My Students page and repeat the process to find the correct student. Just want to really make sure that you understand that only one test can be open at a time, and always pause and save the student's test when taking a break. At the end of a session, a prompt will notify you that you have completed the session. It'll show you how many items have not been answered, and you'll have the option to go back and look at your work, the student's work, or finish the session and move on to the next section. A confirmation prompt will appear. It will ask you to confirm that you want to submit the session and move on to the next session. Please note that once you move on to the next session, you cannot return to the previous session. Again, I just want to reiterate, TAs may pause and resume the administration as often as necessary throughout the whole administration window. A break can consist of a few minutes to a few days, depending on the student's needs. And because this test is one-to-one administration, this will vary for every student. To close a test, a student's test can be closed only by the TC, only if the criteria for the early stopping rule was met. Okay? If the student did not display an observable response during the SRC, the student response check, and the TA administered the first 4 items in either mathematics or reading, and the student's response was not observable to any of the first 4 test items, then the test may be closed by the TC. If the student responded with an incorrect answer, the incorrect answer is considered a response, and the TA must administer the rest of the assessment. Okay. Note that if a student withdrew or is no longer eligible, the TA must contact the TC and or your state MSA coordinator. When you're ready to submit the test, when you reach the end, you'll be prompted with this prompt on the screen. It will ask you if you would like to review the current session, submit your test, or save and exit. If you click on the submit button, it will ask you to confirm before submission because you cannot get back to the previous session. Okay. After closing or submitting a test for each student, you must enter the accommodations that the student used during the test, as well as complete the end of test survey. Test administrators must enter the following requirement for the MSA system. You have to complete the accommodations after test. That refers to the accommodations that were actually used on the test, not all the ones that you selected before the test. The test administrators must enter the required information for all students. You would complete one end of test survey regarding the overall experience by all of your students. We do look at that information. It is helpful for us in moving forward with revisions and making things easier with MSAA, so please take the time to fill out that end of test survey based on the overall experience you had. Please note that following the administration of the TA will record the accommodations after test tab. It has to be the accommodations that the student actually used during the test. We can't stress that enough, not the accommodations that were made available to the student. So only the ones that they used are completed on the accommodations after test tab. To access the student profiles and complete the accommodations after test tab, you would log into the MSAA system and select the My Students link from the navigation panel. The My Students page displays the list of students being tested. You locate and select the students whose tests have been submitted. Click on the student ID, number hyperlink in the first column. Then you would click on the Accommodations After Test tab. Select the accommodations that the student actually used during the test, and more than one option can be selected. If the student did not use any of the accommodations, you would select the last option, and you would click the Save button when you're finished. So regarding the end of test survey, please remember that each TA only completes one end of test survey. The survey responses provide additional information about how the test functions for students with a unique and varying needs, student engagement with the test, and it's an opportunity to learn the content represented by the state content standards. Okay. The end of test survey, to access this, you would go to My Students and go to any student with a submitted test. You'd click on the Actions button in the Students row with a submitted test, and then you would select Go to Survey. The end of test survey launch screen will open, and you'll read the instructions on the launch page and then proceed with the survey. Again, the TA must complete only one end of test survey. Just want to reiterate some additional support options you have. Earlier in the day, we talked about the Service Center and our tiered approach just want to reiterate that again. If you have any questions, any problems, anything that you need to discuss, you will go to your test coordinator or the MSAA Service Center. And then from there, if your test coordinator needs more information, they would reach out to their state MSAA coordinator, okay? Again, we're just trying to further improve the timeliness of the Service Center responses. We're trying to track the Q&A that's coming in from the field to better inform all state MSAA coordinators regarding the communications that are happening. So if you could please refer to your documents first. That's the TAM, the Directions for Test Administration, the user guides. You can't find the information there, you're going to contact your test coordinator or the Service Center, and then from there your test coordinator will contact the state MSAA coordinator. The MSAA Service Center, when you're contacting them, please be prepared to provide much detail about the process and the issues that you are having and what system that it is occurring on. You need to make sure that you actually leave your contact information, your name, state, district, school, phone, and email. If we don't have this, we can't get back in touch with you, and that creates frustration on all ends. So please make sure that you start your messages with that information and end with that information so that we have it. Please use the student name that's applicable. Please remember to follow procedures, though. For student name, you wouldn't include any student identifiable information via email. You can leave student name information and identifying information on our MSAA Service Center lines because those are secure, but not through email. Any error messages that are appearing on the screen, we want to know what those are so we can better direct our information to you, and the operating system and browser information, as well as any information about the network configuration if that applies to your issue. Okay. Again, please don't include any student identifying information. If you have student-specific information, make sure you're calling the Service Center for assistance. Do not email the student identifying information. Our Service Center is available from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, for both TAs and TCs to answer questions about the MSAA system or the test administration procedures. So please call or email your questions using the information on this slide. It's also located on page 2 of the Teacher Administration Manual. Okay. Another resource you have is Tanya Mead from the OSSE. Her information is located on this slide, as well as the OSSE dc.gov alternate website. For more information, you can also contact Tanya. She is your state MSAA coordinator. Okay. At this time, I'm going to go to our questions. We have about a couple minutes left. Let me just pause for a minute to take a look at those, and we'll start answering questions. So our last couple questions that we have, clarifying the early stopping rule again. The early stopping rule is the only reason that a test can be closed. This is applied after the TA has completed the student response check, and through that process of completing the student response check, there was no observable communication provided. So then the TA would contact the TC, go over what happened during the student response check, and then the TC can apply the early stopping rule to close the test, because that is the only reason the test can be closed. Information on the SRC can be found on page 34 of the TAM. It is in the appendices section. And will scheduling guidance be given via the modules? I'm assuming scheduling guidance is referring to scheduling students and how to complete all the testing. That is really done at a district level. I would contact your TC for that type of support. Anything else? Any other questions coming in? Okay. We're going to be on the line for a couple more minutes. So if anyone wants to continue asking questions, please feel free. We will make sure that all these questions get to Tanya Mead. She will be developing a Q&A document, and that will be posted along with the recording from today's webinar at a later date later this month. So you'll have that as a go-to piece of document that you can refer to. So just some takeaways for your next steps. You're going to, on Monday, you'll have the ability to begin viewing the training modules. I recommend that you start that sometime next week. There are 6 to get through. You will need to complete your end of survey quiz, final quiz for accessing the DPAs so that you can get to those DPAs. And then after today's presentation, you will receive a survey link to provide us a little bit of feedback regarding today's webinar. We hope that you can provide that to us. It will only take about 5 to 10 minutes. It's a really short survey, so please be on the lookout for that. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact Tanya Mead at the at OSSE. She is your MSAA State Coordinator, or the Service Center. So that will conclude today's presentation. Again, we'll be on the line for a couple more minutes if any questions do come through. One question we just received for anyone who's on the line, did we receive any sort of confirmation certification for today's training? We do track who was on the call and who this was sent out to. That information will be provided to Tanya Mead. Measured Progress does not provide any type of certificate for this, so that would really be a policy question back to Tanya. So we will try to add that to the Q&A document that we provide. Okay, at this time, there are no other questions coming in. We are going to end the WebEx webinar. If you have questions, please contact the MSAA Service Center or Tanya Mead. Thank you so much.